Now, look, ordinarily at this spot, what we'd do is we'd get a dear friend of the program in, we'd have a look at the papers, we'd sort of kick around the front pages and the way the newspapers are treating issues of the day. Today, all that changes because we're about to lose one of our key paper reviewers. He's decided he can get better paid elsewhere. I don't know.
No, just pay.
I always enjoyed the free minced tarts out in the corridor.
I brought minced tarts in today, so you make sure that you get one.
Thank you.
Tim Wilson, of course, formerly of the IPA, former member of the Liberal Party. Both those memberships now renounced because he is Australia's newest Human Rights Commissioner. Congratulations.
Thank you, that's very
Congratulations.
How long has this been in the pipeline?
I've only been aware of it the past couple of weeks, where I was asked if I would like to serve, and I have said yes. And so, but I only found out about it, about 12 hours before everybody else. So, yesterday came as a bit of a stun and a shock.
In fact,
for good and bad reasons.
Let's look at the headlines you are creating this morning. Some of the headlines. You're in the Australian. Yeah. The Australian Financial Review will bring some of those up. How does it feel as a newspaper reviewer to actually see your
what's
name
the
there?
Today?
It's not his main job, of course.
Oh, look, it's not as though I'm being publicity shy in the past. I've always stood up very assertively for what I believe in, and so it's nothing particularly new. But there's a particular... Oh, that's my info. But anyway,
we'll get to that.
I am not responsible for the nation's deficit or its debt. The focus is on my appointment. And look, the coverage actually has been quite interesting. I think most of them have played it straight bat. I've got some compliments and nice comments in articles from people who I've disagreed with in the past and who are giving me the benefit of the doubt. The Financial Review has written about whether a classical Liberal or Conservative can advance a human rights agenda. Obviously, I am a departure from some of the people who have previously held the role, but I don't think there should really be any doubt about that. The Australian has been focusing on the fact that there is some disagreement about my appointment, which I will pretty much leave to itself. And then, but they then have a big spread as well on the front page of the agenda section, looking at the broader issues about what Senator Brandis, who's the Attorney General, plans to do in this portfolio, particularly reforming the Human Rights Commission.
Well, that to me is can I say even more interesting than... No, that's unkind. I won't say that.
No, I know.
Just as interesting as George Brandis saying that, yeah, he's got big plans for reforming the Commission, so we'll get to that next year.
Yes.
You want to refocus the Commission on defending free speech. What freedoms do we not have now that we should?
Well, we have plenty of freedoms, but from my perspective, there are a small number of human rights, what we call traditional human rights, around freedom of speech, movement, association, religious faith, worship and private property rights and self-determination. They're what's normally called the negative human rights, which means that we have to defend those rights against intrusion by government, and that is where a lot of my focus will be going, because I think those are the ones that are being increasingly diluted because of a focus on issues like anti-discrimination law and everything else. And we saw, of course, in the last Parliament, many proposals put up to further restrict free speech and, as well, free media, and I plan to be an outspoken advocate against those sorts of proposals.
But just on that point of free speech, what elements of free speech don't we have?
As you know, there are currently restrictions in the Racial Discrimination Act which make it essentially illegal to insult, offend, humiliate or people on the basis of group identities. There was a proposal, as I said last year, to extend that to all groups. And I don't come from a groups right-based perspective. I come from an individual rights-based perspective. We need an open contest of ideas. We need free speech, and the only way to challenge and tackle offensive speech is to have more speech and for people to openly mock and ridicule things that people say that they find offensive.
The section that you mentioned that you're referring to there is 18C,
yes,
part of the Racial Discrimination Act. But isn't it true that that's also then balanced by the section 18D, which allows you to actually be offensive, to make offensive remarks, to write the comment pieces, say that Andrew Bolt wanted to write, as long as you get them right? Isn't it true that in the Bromberg judgment of 2011 that Andrew Bolt could have got away with making those points if he wasn't found, as he was found by the judge, to have made errors in fact and to have twisted facts? Then he actually could have used that section as a defence.
Well, firstly, I need to state that these issues aren't just about Andrew Bolt. They're about the principle, and they're about a principle that we universally share.
But the judge was looking at that principle.
Exactly, but particularly around 18D, that is an exemption based on whether something is accurate or not accurate. Yep. And I don't see the gates of free speech aren't open or closed based on factual accuracy. When it comes down to free speech, people should be able to say things. We should have incorrect ideas put out there, exposed and addressed in response. We shouldn't actually be having a situation where things are shut down just because they're incorrect, because we'll never have the proper debates that we need to have.
So in this particular case, Andrew Bolt could have got away with saying those comments, though, if he'd just got his facts straight.
Well, but that's why I said it's not actually about Andrew Bolt. It's about a higher principle.
But that's the case that everyone's sort of nailing it to.
That's the case that other people are nailing it to. That's not what I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on a much broader principle.
But you'll fight for the right for people to make errors.
To make errors and for them to be mocked and ridiculed and for their reputation to suffer as a consequence if they make errors.
For whose reputation?
The person who makes the error.
Okay, good. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Sarah has tweeted with a question, offensive speech is one thing, Tim, but what about racially intimidating speech?
Well, there is a point in which speech goes to the point of engaging in intimidating people to the point where it may end up in violence, and that's a very different proposition. There are legitimate restrictions on free speech when they interact with other human rights, and of course one of the most important human rights is people's rights over their own lives and their self-determination. And when you get to a point where speech can lead to violence, then the state has a right to step in and say there is a limitation there because it will lead to infringement on other people's human rights. And, you know, don't get me wrong, this is not an endorsement of every type of comment that everybody makes, which I agree and disagree with.
Well, you've got to be careful about that stuff.
No, well, exactly. But the central point is that if you're endorsing people if you're endorsing people's right to say one thing that you disagree with, you also, in consequence, endorsing essentially the exact opposite right for those people who want the alternative comment.
Well, that's always the problem, and that's the balance, and the balance that those sections hope to sort of achieve between them, because as you say, if you champion the right of people to say pretty much anything they like, well, then you get into the stuff that, well, we receive every day, for example, here.
The Twitter bile.
Well, no, but also the letters that say that, you know, that the banks are all a Zionist conspiracy and that the Holocaust never happened and the like. You get to that kind of absolute rubbish, championing free speech and everyone's right to say what they want to say.
But ultimately, people should be able to say that, and we should mock them for the hate in their heart, for their stupidity,
so
for their inaccuracy.
The response should just be mocking to stuff like that?
The response should be more speech. When you face challenges around free speech and people saying things that are incorrect or outrageous or offensive, the solution is people to stand up, say that is dead wrong, and then address it as such.
Now, Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was one thing also mentioned by the Attorney-General George Brandis yesterday when you were appointed, that he wanted to pay particular attention to that. It's worthwhile mentioning. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. That's pretty much what Edward Snowden did, the NSA leaker. So, as our Human Rights Commissioner, would you be defending the rights of an Australian Edward Snowden?
Well, of course, I will defend all human rights universally, but I think that this is one of these areas where the state has a right to certain secrets, and there will be some sort of compromise. And I've no doubt this will come up many times over the 5 years of my appointment, and I'll probably make more comments into the future.
Which way do you lean, though? Would you lead more towards the shutting down the Snowdens or letting the Snowdens speak?
For instance, I'm a complete supporter of whistleblowing, where there's an injustice being done and there's a document that's within the possession of government that, if released or information is released, would significantly embarrass the government. That's one thing. But if it goes to the extent of compromising national security so that we can't preserve and protect human rights, then of course it goes much further.
Now, this is your last burst as a newspaper reviewer. Let's give you one last opportunity.
That was the biggest issue I had in terms of whether I took on this role or not, whether I'd still get to come on the couch every second Wednesday and
Bless
chat to
you for saying that, even though I know you don't mean it.
Well, it was a consideration.
Let's get to one. I know how much
Pick one or two.
I don't know how much you want to talk about the Ashes, so we'll leave that to one side.
It's not your skill set.
Let's quickly,
please. Oh, now that's very unkind. I heard about it this morning.